Eric, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Well, good morning, Tom. Thank you for having this discussion with me. My name is Eric, and I've been a Bible student for a long time. I've been a Christian for a long time. Can't say that I've always been what I should be. I'm not the holiest person that's ever walked this walk, but I certainly try. I love God, and I'm thoroughly sold on God. I think there's a big difference between people that are religious and people that really have a relationship with God. Because I believe that when God does something, he really changes a person's heart. And when you see people that are really saved, they're not represented by the people that you usually see on TV. The people that bark like dogs in the aisle, or the people that wave the signs saying, God hates this group or that group. That's not Christian at all. I think the real Christians are the ones that you see that really show love and compassion for one another. And they can sit around and talk about doctrines without calling each other names and dragging each other through the mud. It's more like steel sharpening steel. I think these are the ones that represent Christ, and some of these other groups really bring a lot of ridicule on the church. And when I see certain things that are happening in the church, I can't blame the world for ridiculing us so hard many times. Because quite frankly, I think we bring a lot of that on ourselves through the ridiculous antics that people can just perform. So I ask people to judge God for God, and not to judge God according to some of the people that say they serve him. But that's basically me, buddy, in a nutshell.
Cool. Yeah, I think
I'm a father. Father and a Christian, and I try to be a friend.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's rational. I think that we shouldn't judge a ideology by someone who espouses the ideology. We should judge it based on its own merits. And so I think that
Amen.
I'm an atheist, of course. I don't believe in a God. And I think that one of the biggest contributing factors to that was what the God of the Old Testament self-attested to have done in the Bible. I think that it's very immoral from my perspective.
I can understand that position. I would assume that one of the things that you're talking about would be the God gets charged with genocide a lot.
Yeah.
And plus, there are times where he told, like Saul, for instance, to go in and wipe out an entire village. Where a lot of people misjudge God on that is that while that happened, it didn't happen to, and this is probably going to sound crazy, but it's part of the Bible. It didn't happen to what the Bible would call a regular tribe of human beings. There were tribes that were in the earth in that day, in the promised land, that had gigantic people in them, according to the stories. And these people were called Nephilim or Raphaim, and they were actually a combination of they were hybrid people. They were a combination of angels and demons, or angels and humans, and they go back to the days of the flood and after that. But they were giants in the area in those days. They were called the Raphaim and the Nephilim. They were represented by the tribes called the Anakim, and many of the Canaanite tribes in the area were either tribes of giants or they were associated with and fighting with tribes of giants. And in that particular case, there was a tribe of giants. They were related to Anak, who was a Nephilim, a fallen angel.
Well, even if I don't think there's any evidence to support that giants existed, but even if that were true, I'd still say what he did was immoral, because I think that any conscious agent of any kind has moral value, and so to destroy any life unnecessarily is immoral.
Well, I would agree with that. So they definitely were intent on wiping out human beings and breeding us out of existence anyway. That was originally where the flood came. It was a protective act because we were being. If you read the Book of Enoch and Jasher, for instance, they go deeper into Genesis chapter 6, where it talks about the sons of God looking upon the daughters of men and taking daughters and bearing the Nephilim. And the Nephilim were giant tyrannical people. I've actually got a theory, Tom, that I believe holds water, and that is that all of the ancient religions and mythologies that you have from the Mesopotamians, the Greeks, the Romans, etc., they're all related. And they're not just randomly telling stories. I believe that each of them are telling their version of the truth of actual events that really happened. And that's why they're so similar. That's why all of these various accounts from all over the world give us stories about beings from the heavens that come to the earth and multiply with mankind, and their offspring being tyrannical beings that are eating mankind, cannibalizing men, and usurping all of our resources and choosing our women. That stands true. Then you have the Clash of the Titans, for instance. That's true in Viking lore. It's true in Mesopotamian lore. It's true in ancient Greek, ancient Rome, and the Bible. They all talk about this Clash of the Titans, where they were wiping each other out, these giant tyrannical beings at war with one another. That's widespread in the Book of Enoch. I mean, plainly told in the Book of Enoch and Jasher. And
why would you think that that's true and not just a story, that humans make up the same story a lot? Because none of the archaeological evidence seems to support that. None of the historical evidence seems to support that. Why believe it's true?
I think all the evidence supports that. We have quite a bit of evidence of things that we can't explain, like when we go to Baalbek and when we go to Peru, when we go to Central and South America, all over the world, we have these ancient monoliths that are the earliest buildings, earliest structures that were ever built, as far as we can tell. And they're built in a superior way, like the walls in Cusco. They're monolithic walls that are polygonal structures, polygonal rocks put together that are just absolutely huge. And we would be hard pressed to build these walls today, Tom.
Not really. No, I don't see. Like, most of the historians and architects disagree on that. Like, I don't know any historians who think that most of the stories in the Bible were true. Most historians think that Moses didn't exist. There's no evidence of a global flood. All the evidence contradicts a global flood for Noah. All the evidence contradicts a Exodus. There's no historical evidence of the Exodus whatsoever. And so if these things happened, you would expect there to be a lot of like archaeological evidence of these things, but pretty much all of the historians disagree that it ever happened.
What evidence do you think disproves the flood?
The fact that there are trees older than the flood, and if it had flooded, they'd all die. The fact that there are animals all over the world that couldn't have gotten there if after there was a flood. Like kangaroos could not have jumped across the Atlantic Ocean after landing in wherever the ark landed. It's not physically possible. The number of species on the planet are way too much. There's literally not enough water on the planet to flood the planet. The amount of energy released for flooding the planet would have vaporized everything. It's literally physically impossible. Pretty much disproved in every
Well,
scientific field.
that would be if I guess that would be if all the timelines were right, but I don't believe the timelines are right. I think that there is abundant evidence of the flood, and more scientists are beginning to agree with me. I can point this out. For
I know a
instance,
lot of the scientists. That's not the case. I believe
mhm,
something like 99.999% all say it's wrong, and then some creationists say it's right. But that number is not increasing; it's decreasing, and it's only
I
the only
can
ones who do agree are Christian or Abrahamic religions. Nobody in any
I can
non-Abrahamic
actually
religion actually supports any of that data.
prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're wrong on that. That the timing is wrong, and do this scientifically. The
Timing is
work is
what
already
timing?
done to prove that. What's that now?
What timing? Because I didn't bring up any timing. I just said most scientists disagree. Which
Well, the
timing?
timing of the flood. Like you're saying that you're assuming that the flood was how long ago?
6,000 years ago.
Yeah. Why? I don't know why anybody would assume that. You're not the only one to assume that. I'll give you that. There are some Christians that would say it was, 4,000, 6,000 years ago, but I don't believe that.
Okay.
I believe that the flood occurred many thousands of years ago, approximately 12,000 years ago, during the Younger Dryas age. And there's ample evidence of this worldwide.
Again, all historians, all archaeologists would disagree with that. All geologists would disagree with that. There are civilizations who
Not
were
all.
alive 12,000 years ago, and 13, and 11, and 10, and so it's not the case that that's possible. Um, there's lots of evidence of lots of local floods, and local floods were then used as the impetus to write stories in many cultures, which is why they're the same. But there's no evidence of a
Do you
global
agree
flood.
with me? Do you agree with me that during the days of the dinosaur, let's say the Jurassic and Cretaceous age, would you agree that scientists say that the Earth was in a state of Pangea?
Yes, you mean where all of the continents were connected?
Yes. Yes. Okay, there's step one right there. Because you don't have to, if the Earth is in a state of Pangea, when the flood occurs, you don't have to have uh, animals swimming to Australia or animals swimming to the South Pole. If the flood occurs during a state of Pangea, and I submit that it did. If the scientists agree that the Jurassic and Cretaceous era, when the dinosaurs walked the face of the earth, if they actually agree that the earth was in a state of Pangea during that time, then it wouldn't take so much we don't know the state of the mountains. We don't know how high the mountains were when the earth was in a state of Pangea. As a matter of fact, it was probably just getting ready to break apart. And so, chances are mountainous areas would be small anyway. Mountains would not be nearly as high as they are right now. But you see, we have proof that the dinosaurs couldn't have lasted that long anyway. And I know you know about the soft dinosaur tissue.
Well, those are
So
possible for long periods. If there's no oxygen, if you trap it in an environment, it will stay soft. That doesn't actually prove timelines whatsoever. You can do that for infinitely as long as you want, and as long as you don't have any way to evaporate the liquid, it'll stay soft forever. So scientists have already debunked that like immediately. That was a creationist claim that was never backed up by science.
well, you see, I've gone a lot deeper than just looking at the surface here. I've actually looked at all of the scientific papers regarding this and studied them.
Oh, we lost connection. Hey, you back?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No
I think
problem.
I hit the wrong thing. Okay, but what I can do, I can pull this up for you and show you Mary's work. I don't know if I can share this, but I can put a link in our Facebook chat here for you, and that way you can follow along what I'm talking about here. But if you were to pull this up, this is Mary Schweitzer's paper. Now, one of the things that Mary Schweitzer did, everybody knows that she found the soft tissue in the T Rex bone. A lot of people aren't aware that she found it in more than one dinosaur. She also found it in a hadrosaur that they say was 88 million years old. But if you go down to the abstract, you're going to find out something really interesting. That they have been finding the soft tissue going back almost 100 years. This mentions back to the 1960s, but she does another paper where they talk about the soft tissue going back nearly 100 years. But what they find here, you see, half-lives matter. Everything has, like biological tissues and etc., have half-lives. And so at the end of, I'm sure you know how a half-life works, Tom. At the end of the first half-life, you've only got 50% of whatever substance you're measuring there. At the end of a second half-life, you've only got 25%. At the end of the third half-life, you've only got 12.5%.
Well, that's for atoms, like uranium, plutonium, those have half-lives. And half-lives are like regular things like carbon are millions, hundreds of thousands of years. Like it's a long time.
Well, carbon, C14 has a half-life of 5,730 years. But biological tissues have half-lives too. Biological agents, like, for instance, collagen. There's different types of collagen. There's vascular collagen. Now, vascular collagen is what they find in, of course, bloodstream, etc. It's only got a half-life of 60 to 70 days. But then there's skin collagen, which has a half-life of 15 years. But then there's the collagen you have in your cartilage. It has a half-life of 117 years. Now, at the end of 10 half-lives, you basically have none of the original element left that's measurable, a measurable amount for you to work with. So basically, that's why after 57,000 years, they generally don't carbon-14 test anything. Because after 10 half-lives, it's basically pointless to test. So 1,117 years is 10 half-lives for collagen. But
well, no, that's not the case. It changes based on whether it's being preserved or not. So like,
well, that's what I'm about to show you here.
Well, so I just checked the papers, and rather than disproving evolution, the discovery of soft tissue in dinosaur bones actually supports the idea of evolution by providing new insights into the genetic and physical characteristics of each animals. Scientists have shown that soft tissue in bones can be survived for millions of years, depending upon the way in which it is buried and protected from scavengers and other forms of decay. So,
yes, the question is, how long can it be preserved? What's the longest they've been able to preserve this?
Well, we haven't been able to preserve it. It doesn't matter if we preserve it. Nature can preserve it indefinitely. It's pretty much forever.
Well, actually, we have been able to preserve it. And we've been able to push the limits on how far we've been able to preserve it. If you look down at the abstract, she actually says, and I'm going to quote here, the persistence of original soft tissues in Mesozoic fossil bone is not explained by the current chemical degradation models. In other words, we don't have a way to explain this sort of preservation.
Well, actually, maybe at the time she wrote the paper, that's true, but we have actually fully explained it today. We've completely explained it.
No, we haven't.
We have. We've completely explained it.
Well, I'm about to go on, and if you can point out any longer preservation, please do.
Well, we have preservation
goes-
of biological mass in ice, which lasts forever. If you freeze it, it lasts forever.
Well, no, not
Yes.
forever.
Yeah, forever.
I'm gonna point something out to you here. Okay, now, why don't we carbon 14 test anything that's over 60,000 years old?
It's not accurate above 50,000 years or something like that.
And why isn't it?
Because of different ways in which the carbon can be introduced into the system, and so it only lasts based off how it's introduced into the organism. And
No.
yes, that's why.
The reason that they stop after 57,000 years is because there shouldn't be any of it left. It's measurable, period. Okay. Now, there are cases where it can be preserved longer than the average. The average for C14, like I said, is 5,700 years, but the average for the collagen, at the very most, is 117 years. At the end of 10 half-lives, you've only got 1,170 years. But if you look at what Mary found, she was able, through iron and oxygen, the iron that's found in the hemoglobin of ostrich blood, she was able to use this to preserve these proteins 200-fold from approximately 3 days to more than 2 years.
So I just checked it. After 50,000 years, there are other sources of carbon that can contaminate the sample, making it difficult to accurately determine the origin of the C14. So I was correct. That is the reason, because other sources can contaminate the sample at that point.
So then nothing is reliable. No dating is reliable. If you're going to throw carbon-14 testing under the bus, you've got to throw all testing under the bus because
because it's the reason is once you get to that long, the levels of carbon can be introduced by other sources to make it unreliable at that 50,000 year mark. Before that, it works fine.
Everything can be seeped in and seeped out.
No, it's the amount that can enter a system through random processes would only be significant after that amount of decay. So after 50,000 years, when there's minuscule amounts left, that minuscule amounts can be contaminated by external sources. That's why it's only accurate to that stage. So the amount that can be entered into the system externally is usually pretty small, but it's enough that it would contaminate the data at that measurement level.
I think people are covering their butts for the fact that there is carbon-14 found in absolutely every single sample of dinosaur bone that's ever been tested, to my knowledge.
Yes, because it can be entered in from other sources.
Isn't that odd?
No.
Because, okay, now let's look at this, though. Hemoglobin increased the tissue stability, according to the abstract here of Mary's paper. Hemoglobin increased the tissue stability by more than 200-fold, from approximately 3 days to 2 years. So that's all they were able to get out of this, Tom. 200-fold increase. Now, if you have a 1,170 years, which is the extent of that collagen, by the end of 1,170 years, there shouldn't be any left. And yet, we're supposed to believe in 65 million year old piece of bone is still living? I don't think so. They said that was impossible when it was first found. All of the critics told Mary Schweitzer, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know biofilm from biological stuff. And she earned her PhD by proving that this was indeed soft tissue. But the important thing here, the important number, is the 200-fold increase. To go from 1,170 years to 65 million years, you need a 55,555-fold increase. Not a 200-fold increase.
Not sure what your argument. So I Googled it. Carbon-14 can be added to dinosaur bones in a number of ways, such as exposure to groundwater,
we're not talking about carbon-14 here, brother.
We're
not talking about carbon-14.
Applies to anything. We said there was no carbon. Why is there carbon in dinosaur bones? I wanted to address that really quick.
I think you're misunderstanding my argument. I'm not talking about carbon-14. I'm talking about the...
Well, I wanted to address this argument because I thought I heard you say. Maybe you didn't. It doesn't really make a difference. Carbon-14 has a half-life of 50,000 years, should be gone after a few 100,000 years. Why is it in dinosaur bones? One, because contamination of groundwater, contamination of air, contamination of other tools,
Well,
and
they can explain
sources.
it away any way they want. The
Well,
point is,
this
it's
isn't
there.
explaining it away. This is just facts. Like,
Well, it
can
is explaining it away.
carbon-14 be entered into a system from other things? It's not explaining it away. This is a fact. We know this is a fact.
But here's the point, Tom. Here's the point. The point that you're not getting, brother.
What's the point?
It's a 200-fold increase, only 200-fold increase.
Of what?
You can't show me an increase in stability any greater than 200-fold.
Wait, what
Not
is,
in testing.
What is the 200% increase of what? What are we talking about?
It's not 200% increase. It's a 200-fold increase.
Of what?
I'm in the abstract. Mary's abstract.
Yeah, but what are we talking about? 200-fold increase of what? What are we talking about?
The tissue stability that she tested. She took, right here, according to the abstract, they took a sample of protein, and this protein that probably was used has a 3-day or so half-life to it, because it says that they went from approximately 3 days to they were able to preserve it for 2 years. It should have been gone in 3 days, but they were able to preserve it for 2 years. They had a 200-fold increase in stability preservation. So that means that instead of 1,170 years, a 200-fold increase, 200-fold, would extend that to 234,000 years. That's all you have for this particular protein.
So in one experiment, which they did relatively recently, they found they could do this.
This was not one experiment recently done. This was many experiments. This was hundreds of experiments.
Right. So do you think we've discovered every way to preserve soft tissue?
No, but we've certainly discovered the longest one so far is 200-fold.
Right. So of the very limited amount of research we've done in the field, we've already found one.
This is not limited amount. I don't know how you can say this is a limited amount, Tom.
We've just discovered
We've
this.
done all kinds of research on this, trying to.
So this is basic science. We only know 1/1,000,000th of 1% of anything. That's just scientific fact. We don't know everything.
Well, look, if you want to hang on hopes and dreams, you can, Tom.
Wait. So this discovery, which is a relatively recent research into the field, has discovered already that we can go back 200,000 years with very limited research.
Recent. What do you mean by relatively recent?
Humans haven't been just researching this for thousands of years. This is a relatively recent discovery. So of the few,
this is from 2014.
Right. So it's a recent discovery, recent research.
It's nearly 10 years old, dude.
Right. So we haven't been researching the field for very long, which means we haven't even come close to discovering the oldest ways.
Do you really want us to think that?
Stop interrupting. We have not discovered the ways, just based off of what you said. This is one of the earliest forms of research in the field, and it's already discovered a way to preserve it for 200,000 years. I've already told you of ways we could preserve it for hundreds of millions of years by using ice.
No. Dude, show me the test on that.
Show you the test on that. We actually have like mammoths
on your theory.
We have mammoths frozen in ice that are.
For how long? That's not millions of years.
That's millions of years. We have millions of years. So let's say oldest.
That's not millions of years. The mammoths caught in ice, dude, in the North Pole and the South Pole and stuff. They're only thousands of years old.
68 million year old tissue found in ice.
Where?
I don't know. I'm just livescience.com. I'm just
reading the titles. 68 million years old.
By doing the other kinds of dating methods that we already have.
Which one?
Don't know. It's the same ones that we know for a fact work.
Do you know how the dating methods work?
Yes, there's a number of them. One we can use geological dating.
Okay, let's say somebody's going to use uranium.
I don't. The decay methods have been proven. They work. You don't get to deny them. They work 100%.
Uranium lead.
Wait. So all of the dating methods 100% work, and we can prove they work because they make novel testable predictions. Novel testable predictions prove that they work. But
let me show you how ridiculous that is.
More confirmatory evidence. Even if you didn't think they work, we can prove that they work by comparing it to geological timescales and say we know how fast geological forms can become about. We know that this layer is a particular age and this layer only has these fossils, and so we can say if we find another one of those fossils some other location, it's always going to be at the exact same comparative layer anywhere in the world.
Dude, it ain't that pretty, and you know it.
What?
It don't happen that way in nature, and you know it.
It does. It does happen that way.
No, it doesn't. They find them all over the place, dude.
They find them at the exact
Now, look,
same layer everywhere.
we
Everywhere
find ocean animals mixed in with reptiles, mixed in with mammals. It happens, dude.
No, they're all at the same
all
layer.
over
The
the
layers
place.
can be mixed because, like, the
Of
layers
course they are.
place, but they're
You
all at
find
the same
things
layer.
mixed up all the time. Like you find malachite, man, in the 110 million year old rock, and they say, "Oh, well, this isn't really mankind that was ancient. No, this was mankind that was suffered in a cave collapse."
Yeah.
And they're not even talking about the same site.
Yeah.
There's two different sites there.
But what I said was they are found in the same layer. The layers are formed in such a way that the layer is consistent between all of the rocks.
Yeah, and mankind was found in 110 million year old rock. That doesn't work, dude.
Yes, like if
that shows you something's wrong.
No.
So what do? They say, "Oh, well, these aren't really bones. These bones aren't really 110 million years old. They seeped down into those rocks."
Yeah, so like if I bury something deep underground, it will be surrounded by rocks that are far much older than it. That's very, very simple to understand. But
yes,
if I want
to that rock doesn't form around it, then
right, and it didn't.
You see, these are found buried in the rock, dude.
Right, that's what
so
happens.
They are as old as the rock.
But we can tell the difference. This is very, very, very simple. Very simple.
You don't even know about malachite, man.
This is extremely simple. Extremely simple. Extremely simple. So a cave-in.
You don't want me to make a point.
No,
that's
you've
okay.
already made the point, and I'm trying to respond, and you keep interrupting. Your point is wrong because when there is a cave-in, all of the layers get mixed up. They get broken apart, and we can literally see the layers in the rock are not.
That's
aligned.
the point. There was no cave, and it was solid rock.
You're still interrupting. We can tell. Stop. You're still interrupting. I'm going to mute you. We can tell the difference between any kind of geological event that took place that mixes up the layers and where the actual layers are. You're still interrupting. You're still interrupting. We know the layers.
It don't matter to you.
I'm trying to give me a chance to answer. I need to be able to respond to your point, and then you can speak again. So your argument is proven false, because we can tell the difference between a rock that is formed in a geological layer and a rock that is a combination of a bunch of different layers due to some kind of earthquakes or tectonic shifts or cave-ins or anything.
This was solid rock. It was not busted up.
It was busted up.
It was solid rock.
Solid. I don't think you understand here. A rock being
solid. It was solid rock.
That's a dumb argument. It doesn't matter if the rock is solid. What matters is are the layers individualized? There's a different. A solid rock can form in many ways. Lava can form a solid rock. Obviously,
and they
it's not
were
going to be the same layer. So solid rock is not an argument. Solid rock does not matter. What matters is are the geological layers straight, just like in all the Grand Canyon? And the answer is no. The one you're listing, the malachite, man, it was of a cave-in or something to cause a jumbled mess of all the layers, which shows that no, the dinosaur, the bones that were trapped in it would not be the same age.
You can't prove that, Tom.
I can prove that. That literally. But
look at this. Look at this. What is a 200-fold increase, Tom? Do you have anything that gives you more than a 200-fold increase?
In what?
Yes or no?
In what?
Or is 200 the best you got?
For what? For soft tissue?
Yeah.
Yes. Ice will do it. If you freeze it at absolute zero.
No. I want to see the test. See, I've got the test in front of me.
No. This is a proven test.
I've got the numbers.
You can preserve
in
soft
front of
tissue forever at really close to zero temperatures. This is a fact of science. I don't know.
Now?
You can preserve any object at close to zero indefinitely. Forever.
We don't have any ice on this earth that's been around that long, dude.
I didn't say we did. You just wanted an example. You
said,
do you have an example of something that can?
So you don't have a single. You don't have a single thing that's going to give you better.
No. You asked for. Do we have an example of something that can preserve longer than?
No. I want a tested example.
I did.
I want to see the test.
I did. That is one. We have done.
No.
We have done this test. This is a test.
Show me a test, Tom.
How long can ice preserve soft tissue?
So you're going to go to Google.
Hundreds of millions. Yes, we can preserve it.
Hundreds of millions. Show me 100 million-year-old piece of ice, Tom.
Okay. Oldest ice found. The oldest one we have collected right now is 800,000 years. It's the deepest we've gone down.
Hey, there you go. Thank you. You don't have a 1,000,000-year-old piece of ice, so
we don't need a 1,000,000-year-old piece of ice
So
to
no,
be able. Wait,
that means
what you
that
said
you
is
don't
stupid.
have anything in
what you
ice
said is
that's a
stupid.
1,000,000 years old,
What
dude.
you just said is stupid.
Nothing.
What you just said is stupid.
You don't have no what.
So
you
I
don't
never
have
claimed we had
anything.
ice.
Okay, Tom.
Wait,
Look,
stop,
if
stop,
you don't want to
stop,
hear,
stop.
if you don't want to hear the facts here,
No, you
and
have to listen. You have to
that's
listen to what
okay.
I'm saying.
You don't have
made a
to.
claim. What is the oldest we can preserve something? I said hundreds of millions of years in ice. Then you said, give
And
me an
we
example of
can't
ice.
because we
I don't need to give you an example of ice that old to be
Okay,
able
so you
to
don't have
preserve something in
anything.
ice.
You don't have
No,
anything.
stop talking and listen. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm trying to help you understand here. You asked how long can we preserve something in ice?
Don't talk down to me, son.
You need to be talked down to because you're
Look,
not
you are
intelligent.
less than half my age, Tom.
You are muted.
You're
muted.
not as learned.
You are muted. We cannot hear you. You have to listen. When you ask one question, how long can we preserve something? And I give you an answer, then asking for an example of that thing in reality that we have preserved is called a non sequitur. I do not need to do that. I do not need to show an exact example that we have literally done this. Like I can say I've done a backflip. Does that mean I've done one? No, it does not mean I've actually done one. So asking for a particular example of the thing which I'm saying is possible is a non sequitur. This is basic philosophy. If you don't understand that, that is because you are not qualified in the field of philosophy. I am qualified in the field of philosophy, also qualified in these other fields. You not understanding is not an argument. You do not need to give a particular example of multi-million-year-old ice in order to show it's possible to preserve things in ice forever.
What scientific field are you qualified in, Tom?
All of them.
All of them. Let me see your credentials.
Google it.
You don't have any credentials, dude.
I have more credentials than you. Do you have an argument?
I don't need any credentials. I have.
You're unqualified in all of these fields. I don't care. I didn't ask for your credentials because I don't care what your credentials are. I'm interested in the arguments and the evidence, not credentials. I know all of these fields. I'm qualified in all these fields. I have experts on all of these fields. Do you have any arguments or evidence? Because I've disproved everything you've said. Absolutely everything, easily. Do you have any arguments or evidence?
Overtalk me to run from these figures because you don't have anything that trumps
I
them.
addressed your figures. I disproved them.
I have. No, you didn't address anything. You just deny it.
How did I not
She has
address
a 200-fold increase, dude.
I don't care.
A 200-fold increase in stability. You don't have anything.
Is that a proof?
Testable.
Does that prove
you don't
that
have anything tested? You don't have one. See, you can't let me finish a sentence.
Do
can
you think that
look?
that
If you can't let me finish a sentence, Tom,
you're muted. Shut up. Do you think that that 200-fold increase is the longest it's possible in any possible way to maintain soft tissue? Is that the longest way and there are no other ways? Is that what you're saying?
It's the longest thing you've got, son.
No, it's not. It's the longest thing you've got.
Yes, it is.
It's the longest you've got.
It's the longest thing you've got. You can't show me anything.
Argument. I've got plenty of examples.
Show me one.
Ice. Debunked.
What?
Ice.
Well, let me
show me.
You just said you don't have a piece that's over 800,000 years old.
To know how ice works. You can
then
know how
ice
it works
did not preserve this, son.
No, you not
ice did not
understanding how
preserve that.
ice works is not an argument against
ice. Has nothing to do with it if it don't have an 80 million year old piece of ice.
I don't need a particular example to know
that means you don't have anything preserved by ice, son.
Again, you're a moron. You not understanding that you can
show me the piece of, and you show me what you have preserved in ice.
I don't need to preserve one to
show me. Okay, so you don't have nothing.
No, you're an idiot. I don't need one. I can know how it works without having to do it.
Son. You have to resort.
What don't you resort to calling? Can you know how something works?
If you're going to resort to calling me an idiot, you don't have anything.
Can you know how something works without actually having an example?
So you don't have anything that gives you more than 200
how
years.
Something works without having an example. Yes or no?
You're afraid of this conversation.
Can you know how something works without having an example? Yes or no?
All I want to know is, do you have anything?
Can you know how something works without having an example?
Yeah, no, not necessarily. No.
Yes, you can't. Name one thing that you can't know how it works without having an example.
Well, all you got then is speculation.
Name
dude.
an example. We know how something works, but we don't have
You
an
name.
example.
Go ahead, tell us. Give us one of those.
Sure, everything. We
Give
know
me
how
one of your
everything works.
examples.
Like people in college, they build things, but like they're told how an airplane works, but they don't actually have an airplane there. They're told how a car works. They don't have a car there. They're told how the clouds work. They don't have a cloud there. Everything they learn about, they're told how toroidal forces in a hurricane work. They don't have a hurricane there. Everything you learn, you understand how it works without having a particular example by using math, by using comparative analysis, by knowing the physics
In other
of
words,
the
you got
equation.
the.
So if I know how it works, if I know what happens when you put an organic material into ice and how it slows down the decay of the material to make sure it can be preserved,
Dude,
I know
nothing
exactly
was
the rate.
preserved that way, dude.
There are hundreds of thousands of things preserved that way.
Not,
What are you
not
talking
from
about?
the date, not from 80 million
I
years
don't
ago.
care. That's a different topic. You asked,
So
can things be preserved?
what you're offering is
Stop.
straw man.
Stop.
You don't have anything to give me that's reasonable.
You're muted. You made a claim that it was 200,000 years where the longest things could be preserved. I said, no, that's stupid. That's just this one example. And you asked for an alternative example of something that can be longer. I gave you one. I proved we can do it. And now you're changing the topic to, well, how do you do it in this one particular case? I don't know how to do it in the particular case because I don't know the examples of what that particular case is. But I know we can preserve things for longer than 200,000 years, which was the point of the conversation. And I debunked you. And then you tried to change the topic. That's dishonesty because you are trying to evade the facts that you are wrong, which is why every scientist, every philosopher, everyone who's an expert in this field who actually does understand these knows creationism is dumb. It has been proven wrong. It is a pseudoscience. We have proven it wrong beyond any shadow of a doubt.
Folks, these bones can't be over 50,000 years old, according to science.
No.
And Tom Jump has nothing.
I'm just going to remove it. I'm done with this. All right. How are you guys doing? Amy, that's a good one. Amber can preserve things too. All right. That was good enough. All right. I'm going to head out. Peace out.